Hello everyone, today I will be making a French bread recipe. I decided to make this on this day because I had some French onion soup and I really wanted bread to go with it with like a nice cheese melted on top. So today I'll be showing you how I made the bread specifically, and I'll also be making some jam because later I use this bread to go with some jam for my kids as a bedtime snack. So the first thing I did is I blend in the bowl, I mixed together 3 cups of flour and some salt. So it was 1 teaspoon of salt. I combined that. Now the total number of flour altogether for this recipe is going to be about 4.5 cups. But we started with 3 cups and 1 teaspoon of salt. In a separate measuring cup, I had 2 cups of warm water and 1.5 teaspoons of active yeast. I left that to sit for about 5 to 10 minutes so that the yeast bubbles in the warm water. And then I added that bubbly water to the 3 cups of flour and 1 teaspoon of sea salt. Now, while I'm doing this, I turn the oven on to kind of warm up. I set a timer for 3 minutes. I just turned the oven on to like 350, and then I set the timer for 3 minutes and I turned off the oven. And that's just so that the oven like heats up because this is a 1 hour bread. So we're basically gonna put the finished dough into the oven, into the warm oven, but the oven's not on. So just so that it helps with the rising. And then I take like a baking sheet, I line it with parchment paper, and I continue to mix this dough. As I'm mixing this dough, as I combine like the 3 cups of flour with the 2 cups of warm water and yeast mixture, as you see, like once it starts to combine, I add a little bit more flour as it goes on. So I add another cup of flour and I continue to stir and mix. So that makes 4 cups of flour at this point. I begin to keep mixing the dough until all the flour gets incorporated into the dough. And then I do add another half cup to this. As you can see, it's still a little bit sticky, a little bit shaggier than I would like it. So I add another half cup of like I add like a quarter at a time. But in total, I end up adding the full 4.5 cups of flour. So I'm gonna mix that in. Just make sure that I'm mixing it in so that the dough eventually becomes smooth and not super sticky. I am using this like dough hook that I have that I usually use for sourdough, but at this point I decide that it's just better to use my hands. At a certain point it like you're working harder using this versus just using your hands. Now you could also use a stand mixer as well. Like I could have used my KitchenAid, but I didn't really want like a whole other dish to clean, and I just felt like I can get this done super quick if I just use my hands. I had like a lot of dishes in the corner kind of surrounding my KitchenAid, so it was a bit less work to just grab a bowl and get to work. But yeah, it adds a nice little workout to your arms, but it doesn't take too long to put it together. So here I am adding the rest of the quarter cup. So now it's a total of 4.5 cups, and this is more than enough at this point. Like once I mix all of this flour in, like the dough becomes smooth and incorporated. It's still slightly sticky, but it's not dry, which is super important. I don't want like a dry loaf. So this bread, I really loved how this turned out, and my family absolutely loved it. We did use it to like spread some jam on it as like bedtime snack, and also just snack throughout like the rest of the weekend pretty much. We had like the rest of the bread with breakfast, and then we also had some bread with as snacks as well. And this is like really nice bread for like a nice soft grilled cheese. Like if my kids don't love crusty crunchy bread, they don't like to like put the effort to to chew through the crusty bread when I make grilled cheese. So I always have to like monitor my grilled cheese really closely so that the bread doesn't get too hard for them. So this bread was actually perfect for a grilled cheese because it was super soft and chewy and like the kids absolutely loved it, especially my 2-year-old. She hates toast. I don't know. She's not a huge fan of toast. So this actually worked out for her. I'm just checking my French onion soup there. This French onion soup took about 2.5 hours to put together. I really like caramelized the onions, and I did a lot of work on this. But this was my first time making it, which is why I didn't really film the full recipe of it. But if you guys want to see how I put that together, because it came out so good, just let me know, and I will. I did end up filming everything, but I'm not sure if I'm going to put it up yet. But it did come out really good. Now, as you can see for the dough, I'm adding just a tiny bit more flour. But what I'm really looking for is that smooth texture. As you can see, everything's coming together really well now. I'm able to mostly get it into a ball without it being too sticky. It's still sticking on my hand a little bit, but it's mostly coming together really well. And this is a little bit of what we're looking for. I'm feeling it out to see if it's, a little bit too sticky. I think I might just add a tiny bit more flour to it, it's not too much more, just a little bit more, just for it to be incorporated really well into the dough. And this is looking much better at this point. So this is basically what you are looking for in terms of texture, in terms of feel. It's coming together, it's starting to look smooth, and at this point we are pretty much good to go to start rolling it out and getting it onto the parchment paper. I'm taking a look to make sure that it's good. I'm gonna just kind of score the dough. So this makes 2 loaves of bread. Okay, so I am going to divide this dough in half and make 2 separate loaves. Now, if you don't want to, make 2 loaves, you can obviously divide the dough recipe in half, or you could make both, freeze one and use one for the week, use the one that's frozen for like another week whenever you choose to do that. For us, we were able to devour both loaves in 1 week. But our kids eat a lot, and then we eat too, so we were able to use like basically a whole loaf for the soup and a whole loaf as snacks and breakfast for the week, which worked out really well. Now, I didn't really have like a flat surface ready for me, so what I did is I stretched out the dough as if it was like a pizza dough almost, and I stretched it out. If you have counter space, I would actually just roll it out with a rolling pin. It makes it a little bit easier. And then once you stretch it out, you just want to roll it into a log and have it somewhat long. I tuck the ends in just a little bit to make sure it's kind of a smooth, the ends are smooth, and I do that for both halves. I put them both on one parchment. It's a larger baking sheet under some parchment paper so it doesn't stick to the baking sheet. So yeah, roll them into logs, tuck in the ends, and here you have your basically your two bread doughs. I guess you'd call it 2 loaves here. I'm just stretching it out so it's a little bit longer. Now, remember that oven that we had heated up in the beginning? Now, mind you, it is off. Please make sure your oven's off and it's had time to cool down a little bit, but I'm basically going to cover this in a kitchen, like put a kitchen towel over this, and then I'm going to put it in my oven for it to be in there for a few minutes. So I'm going to put it in the oven for about 10 minutes. Set a timer so that it doesn't go over the 10 minutes, because you don't want it to like puff up too much. You just want it to puff up basically a little bit. So 10 minutes in a warm oven is good enough. While you're doing that, you can go back and clean up anything that you need to clean up, or get together anything else that you need to get together. Once the 10 minutes is up, you take it out of the oven, you place it back on the top of the stove, and then you turn your oven on to preheat for 425 degrees. So 425 degrees you preheat the oven for. And you can see what this bread looks like now. So this has just been in a warm oven for 10 minutes. That's all it is. And you can see how quickly it's risen already. Once the oven preheats to 425, so while you're waiting for it to preheat, just cover it back with a tea towel. The oven's now preheated. I'm taking the towel off. You can see it's risen even more. Oh, this looks so beautiful. I'm so happy with how this is turning out. And I stick it back into the preheated oven. Set the timer for this is gonna be in the oven for about 20 to 25 minutes. I set the timer for 25 minutes. I check it at 20, but this is what it looked like. It is perfectly golden brown. If you're gonna use a thermometer to check to see if the bread is done, just check that it reads at 180. I didn't do that. I just looked at it. I've made bread for enough time that I can kind of look at it, and for the most part I'll get it right. Like, I'm like, okay, this looks done. So here I am. I'm gonna cut it into slices. Make sure that it cools and rests for 10 to 15 minutes before you cut into it, just to let the moisture kind of go out of the bread. So you want to really let your bread cool. Now for some breads you have to let it completely cool. For this one, 10 to 15 minutes is good enough. Just remember that cooling it is really important. I just use a bread knife to cut through slices of bread, and this is amazing and delicious. One thing you do want to make sure of is that you don't leave the bread to rise for too long, like during those times. That's why we set timers, just to make sure that we're not overdoing it on the rise, or else it'll fall while it's baking. And here I'm just putting together my my daughter's plates for lunch. So I give them a slice of bread. I did melt some cheese over it before I gave it to them, but this is pretty much what it looked like. I didn't give them the whole soup because them and soup right now don't mix well. But I did give them the beef pieces from the soup, and they absolutely devoured this. They loved it. This is what it looked like with the cheese on top. Now I'm gonna go ahead and start on my jam recipe. This is gonna be a strawberry raspberry chia seed. Okay, so the chia seeds are the thickeners for this jam recipe. It is super healthy. It's not that much sugar added. I add about a cup of frozen strawberries, about a cup of frozen raspberries, maybe a cup and a half. And yeah, this is like honestly my favorite way to make jam. I don't know what the difference actually, jam or jelly. I'm not sure what the difference between jam and jelly is, but that's what I'm making. It is made of fruit, and it is used to sweeten bread. But yeah, it's basically about a cup of frozen strawberries, a cup and a half of frozen raspberries. You can do this with any berry mixture. I haven't used any other fruit mixture, but any berry mixture is fine. I do add about a quarter cup of water to it, and then I cover it with a lid and let it boil down for about 10 to 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, this is what it looks like. It is a real liquidy, but that is also because it's like so frozen. Like that ice really, the fact that it's frozen adds more liquid to it. And then I'm going to actually boil it down uncovered for another 15 minutes, and this is what it looks like after 15 minutes. So altogether so far it's been boiling down for about 20 to 30 minutes. You can see that it's thickened up quite a bit. Now if your stove needs a little bit longer to get to this is on like medium heat. It's not super high, but it's also not super low. At this point I will continue to let it boil down just a little bit longer on medium low, not super low, but not necessarily as high as medium either. I'm just mashing up all the bigger pieces right now so that it's not too chunky. If you don't want any chunks at all, you can always, mash it up and then use an immersion blender. I don't have one of those, but if you have one, that would be a really great idea right here. It would be perfect for an immersion blender, or you can strain it out, but I would probably just use an immersion blender so that you're keeping all the fibers in as well. I don't have that, so I'm just mashing it up with the back of my spatula, checking on the heat, and this is some real good thickness. So after another 15 minutes, I'm adding about 3 tablespoons of maple syrup to this. Altogether it's 3 tablespoons. So I add 2 tablespoons, I taste it a little bit, and I add like another little tablespoon. So it's not that much sweetener. This does end up being a little more tart, but I'm okay with that. So I like that I'm able to control the sweetness of this jelly. Like, that's my favorite part of making this, is that I can control how much sweetener I'm putting in, and I'm also not putting in refined sugar. So I'm throwing in maple syrup, and my kids absolutely loved this. Femi loved it. I loved it. I felt like it came out so good. You can see that it's really gotten thicker here. I add just a tiny pinch of salt to bring out the sweetness. It doesn't make it salty. It just brings out the sweetness and the taste a little bit more. Stir it up really well, and then we are going to add chia seeds to this. So you can always taste along as you go, see if it's sweet enough for you, and continue with that. Now I'm gonna add, that's 1 tablespoon of chia seeds. I just use I use like my hands to measure the tablespoons. I kind of have an idea of how much like will fit into my hand. This is 2 tablespoons of chia seeds here, and the chia seeds are going to help thicken up this jelly. That is what we use as the thickener here. As it cools down, it's going to get thicker, and as you have it sitting in the fridge, it's also going to get thicker. This is super healthy. As you know, chia seeds is high in fiber, high in protein. Altogether, I add about 3 tablespoons of chia seeds to this recipe. This is probably about 1.5 cups of jelly. So it fits like 3/4 of a regular size like mason jar. And that's what I store it in my fridge. So once you mix in the chia seeds, it is quite hot still here. I add about 1 tablespoon of lemon juice to it. It brings out a little more of that tartness. Now, if you don't want that much tartness, I would do like 1/2 tablespoon of lemon juice. But yeah, I can definitely do this one. Was a little more on the lemony side, because I added a little bit more. Like, I did like 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice. But you don't need that much if you don't want it. You can taste as you go. And that's pretty much it. Now I am going to put that into my mason jar. And you can see, like, this is how much of it. It's about 3/4 of the jar, basically. A little more than half, maybe not all the way 3/4, but a little more than half of a mason jar. And that's my jelly. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us. Store this in the fridge. It'll last about 1 to 2 weeks, and it's good to go. Take care. Have a great day.